Glad to see people are talking and getting to know each other and exchanging cards. Okay. That's also part of the exercise why we're here today. Thank you for making it back in time. Are you all set for the afternoon session? Are you ready? Great. Lots of excitement in the room, clearly. All right, so we'll want to kick off this session. Like we said, we'll have a panel session that is coming up. But before that, I'd just like to bring up Fabian again to set the scene for us, and then we'll be good to go. Great.
Turning from lunch, and thanks of you who newly joined us for joining us on this session that we're having right now, our panel discussion on how to make online gig work more sustainable in Kenya. And I would love to seize this opportunity and just very, very briefly speak to you about our project, what this is about. My name is Fabian Stefani. I'm an economist and senior data scientist at the University of Oxford and a research affiliate at the Alexander von Humboldt Institute for Internet and Society. You should remember this name because we are jointly, together with our colleagues from the GIZ here, the Digital Transformation Center, organizing this event, the discussion that we had earlier today and is right now. What is this about? This is about the internet. The Alexander von Humboldt Institute is an internet institute. It's the first internet institute in Germany, actually, founded in 2011. And in these last 11 years, it's been growing significantly with the task of explaining our lives, how our individual and collective behavior online shapes our social, economic, and political world. Right now, 11 years into the existence of our institute, we're very proud to have 70 people working for us, hundreds of alumni around the world. But why are we here? What are we doing here? In collaboration with the GIZ, we're working on a project called SET, Sustainability, Entrepreneurship and Digital Transformation. And this is happening not only here in Kenya, though we're particularly happy to be here in Kenya discussing online labor markets, but it's also happening in many, many other places around the world. So our colleagues are continuing their journey in a few days to Vietnam and Indonesia, talking about green entrepreneurship. They have been to Kosovo in the past. I think my microphone is not working anymore, but I'll try to talk a bit louder. So this is really a trip all around the world, and it's all around about digital transformation and sustainability and entrepreneurship. And we usually do this in a very collaborative way with the partners on the ground, with policy partners, with the GIZ, the Digital Transformation Center here, and also gathering your knowledge like we did in this morning session, and now relying on the expertise of people, of experts talking to us on the panel. What will they be talking about? They'll be talking about online labor markets. For those of you who are not familiar with the concept of online labor markets, let me try to enlighten you with this. This is probably one of the most famous statements of the digital age made by Marshall McLuhan, and this is actually a very old statement. You know, if you read it, it sounds oddly familiar, speaking about the global village, you know, speaking about the digital connectivity that's uniting us all in one special place, but this quote is from 1962. So this is 60 years old. What a visionary man, right? And if we think about it, we're probably very much reminded of this global village when we look at the palm of our hand, at our iPhones, you know, when we talk on WhatsApp, on Skype, be it to business partners, be it to friends. They can be in the next room, but they can also be on the other side of the planet, actually. So I think it was a very visionary statement. This specific year, in this year, 1962, there was also another revolutionary thing happening that little people know about. I didn't know about this. A company called EDS in Texas, in Dallas, Texas, in the United States, starting with a revolutionary business concept. And their business concept was to calculate balance sheets of other companies. But the companies were not in the same building. They were also not in the same town. In fact, they were not in the same part of the country. They could have been in New York, they could have been in Detroit, they could have been in Los Angeles. But the trick about this was they were so effective in doing this because they were only doing this, they were only doing the balance sheet calculations, that they saved a lot of money for these companies. And some of these companies are very famous companies, and it's fair to argue that they became so famous and so rich, like General Motors, for example, because of this concept, because of a combination of what we now know as outsourcing and offshoring. So a supplier does something for you, for your company, and this supplier might not be in the same room or in the same city. This supplier might actually be on the other end of the world, where production costs, wages, might be lower. And this double cost-cutting paradigm over the last 60 years, since he made this visionary statement, over the last 60 years, this double cost-cutting paradigm has started to dominate the world as people, bookkeepers from Bangalore work for accounting firms in Boston, or as software developers, for example, in Lahore are working for tech companies in London. And it has accumulated in something like this. This is a picture of the global online labor market. So this is a market where people can buy services from all around the world. Again, where somebody who's looking for a company logo to be designed in London for her startup goes online and at the tip of her fingers with a click of a mouse finds a logo designer, for example, here in Nairobi, here in Kenya. And that's what we're seeing on this map, you know. Services floating around the world from blue cities where they are bought to red cities where a lot of workers are. And if you have a close look, unfortunately for various reasons that we'll be discussing, there's little going on in sub-Saharan Africa. The experts are going to take care of explaining this. But you see, Kenya is actually one of the spots that you see on the map. So there is something going on. So was McLuhan right? Did the world turn into a global village? Can everybody participate? Well, this map shows us a different picture. And also, if you dig deep into research, and the colleagues that we'll be talking know much more about this, we see it has much more been a very uneven market, a strongly polarized market with big cleavages between urban centers and broken provincial cities, with big cleavages between those workers who have great skills that are demanded by everybody around the world and those workers that might be stuck in very repetitive, precarious, and socially insecure jobs. A lot of challenges, you can guess, and I think this is the right time to hand over to our colleagues who will be talking about these challenges. Thank you so much. And we reverse the trick. Bonnie, it's up to you again. The mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're moving to this other side where we'll have a very interesting conversation here. But before we do that, on the seat that you have, there was a piece of paper that had a program, right? On that program, there's a QR code. Okay, I'm gonna wait for you until you get your phone out and follow this. We have an audience that is joining us online in this conversation. Obviously, there's lots and lots of people who are interested in here, who couldn't be here, and really just keeping up with the fact that we're talking about an online economy. There are lots and lots of people who will be joining us online. So this will afford them a chance to participate in this, but also it will give you a chance to raise your comments, raise your questions. I will afford you a chance to ask questions to the panelists that will be here. However, that would be a good starting point. I should use this? Okay. Yeah, so if you could just scan it right through, there's a space there where you can put in your questions and comments. You can choose to be anonymous, that's okay. But if you choose also to indicate your name and what you do, we're perfectly okay with that. And the whole point is you don't have to wait until the end of the conversation to interact. You can have your impressions there and we'll be picking them in the course of this conversation. Is that okay? Has everyone gotten through to using that? Okay, great. So let's get this show on the road. I will be inviting the next set of people to join me on stage. First off, I'm so glad that we're talking online and digital matters, and we have quite a number of ladies represented in this panel. First off, allow me to bring on stage Dr. Shiko Gitau, who is the Chief Executive Officer at QHALA. I hope I said that correct. At KALA. My apologies. I'll help you. Yes. All right, joining Shiko on stage is Elizabeth Wanja. She's a Program Manager for the Africa Center for Women in ICT. You know it's okay to clap, right? Thank you. And finally, you had him on stage before. He presented a very detailed paper. Let's have Professor Tom Kwanya from the Technical University of Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being part of this. This is really exciting for me because now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of this. We're really getting to understand our market and really getting to figure out what really is our role. And I think when we started in the morning, we opened by saying, how do we find what our role is and how do we best play in that space? But just to kick us off, I'll start with Dr. Shiko first because I massacred your business's name. So I'll give you a chance to tell us a little bit about what color does in this space. Sorry, I'll ask you to use your microphone. Are the mics on? This is like Zoom, yeah? We can't find the mute button.
Can you hear me? Oh yeah, you can hear me now. So thank you, Bonnie, and the team at GIZ, and that very hard name that I can't actually say, who put this together, and for inviting us and allowing us to share our work. So Color is a digital innovation lab. We're very specific in calling ourselves a lab because our goal is to be able to be continuously learning. Okay, thank you. We provide support, advisory, and sometimes program management services on anything digital across the country. So we have a research team that works around policy, program, and product research. So we help people who are trying to come into the continent and want to build a product. We help them do from user research and exploratory research to actually user testing. We do policy research, and this is important, especially in a digital age where there's lots of gaps in policy. You have no idea until you start doing something and you're told, oh, that is regulated or not regulated, and you have to start thinking around it. And program, we work with many, especially donor organizations who are trying to think of a program that they need to introduce into the country or continent, and we help them design the programs and sometimes program manage them. Then we have a robust data science team. So if you guys, the Kenyans, last year you heard the president saying that the experts told me. You remember that statement? So we were the experts.
Oh, it's you guys.
Yeah, it's us guys. You blame us for closing down Nairobi. I remember that actual decision is something we worked on for 2 nights without sleep, because we needed to map out what does Nairobi actually entail, and we used mobility data showing if you left Kencom and went to the farthest place that people moved to, where is the farthest place. So it was not just a decision, it was an economic decision of making sure that Nairobi actually operates if there's a shutdown. So we use data science to inform policy, program, and product. And our biggest work was this on COVID, and now we actually provide support for the Ministry of Health in terms of responding to other incidences around health. Then we have engineering, so we build everything, platforms, mobile apps, and stuff. And then we have a venture studio where we work with subject matter experts to respond to Africa's most persistent problems. So that is Color in 2 seconds.
Thank you. And I just wanted that to be clear because we talk about people playing in this space, and I think it's important to have actual real companies who are involved in this space. So let's just zoom out a little bit and look broadly at Kenya. Prof, in the morning you gave us a quick look at the Kenyan market, at what roles are available, who plays where. If you could just paint a really quick picture of what's working for Kenya as far as online jobs are concerned.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, true. We looked at the landscape of the gig economy in Kenya, trying to paint a picture of it. And beginning for the numbers, as we said in the morning, about 37,000. But there's a bit of a discrepancy about that number because this was figures as of 2019. And of course, from where I sit as an academic, we look at what we call credible sources that we can cite. So if there's none yet, we cite the latest. which in this case was 2019. And in between also in the literature I mentioned in the morning that we also saw that there are certain estimations putting this figure at a very higher point, about 1 million or so. And so what we were saying is that probably the real figure lies somewhere in between. But what that means is gig is real. It means gig work is real in Kenya. And the numbers notwithstanding, and again, there was also the indication that numbers are growing. And in the discussion, we also realized that in the recent past, the numbers may have grown in response to COVID, the challenges that came with it, and digital spaces being looked at as the other alternative or option in the absence of physical interactions. And most of the gig workers are doing all manner of things, on-site, off-site, online and on-site, and a lot of them from our data work in the retail, market, in e-commerce, retail and wholesale sales that they do on platforms, selling products, selling services on behalf of either local companies or international companies. In some cases, acting as selling merchandise. Yeah. And again, the
Sorry, use mine.
Sorry about that. The next most popular, if I may call it, is transport and shared ride. And again, there the numbers are very high. And looking at the bigger picture in terms of who is involved, in terms of gender, most of them are men, about 80%, and the female gender, the other balance. Looking at age, again, the larger majority of them from 35 years downwards. For the ladies, most of them just the majority at under 25 and a little more up to 35, but none above 35. In terms of education, we saw most of them are high schoolers. people who have high school qualification and nothing more. In terms of length, most of them have worked for 3 years and below, and not many have gone beyond 5 years. In our conversations during lunchtime with one of, I think, Anthony, he picked out that there were actually 2 from our data who had worked for 11 years. And we just want to find out how they maintained, that length of time, because the majority of them are working for under 3 years. And then most of them view themselves, about 80%, 68%, sorry if I mix up the percentages, and viewing themselves as full-time employees. Yeah. But on the other hand, the platform owners view them as autonomous, independent contractors who get paid for work they do for the period that they work. And of course, many issues that can emerge out of that would go into conflicts and stuff. In terms of contracts, a large majority of them have contracts, but about 20% do not have contracts. And again, that means a lot in terms of such discrepancies. If they don't have contracts, then how are they engaged? Many challenges in terms of regulation. Of course, trying to balance the needs of the workers, because many of them go into gig work to earn a living, and also to put, in fact, some say to put food on the table for their families. And that's why they view themselves, because that's all they do. But on the other hand, it's just a side hustle for some people. And so it's important that we're able to balance that here is a group of people working to earn a living and put food on their table. And so should we stop at just being enabling them to just put food on their table? Or should we think about that work, making sure it is decent, it is dignifying, and that their rights are not violated? And on the other hand, are platform owners who are largely business people interested in the bottom line, making profit, and trying to minimize costs at whatever level and be able to reduce their costs of production, in this case, production of wealth. And so, so there need to be a balance which is able to take the needs of the platform owners and also the gig workers that are working through the platforms. And that can largely come through regulation. Now, that's the conversation that we're inviting you to participate in. What kind of regulation should this be? Is it self-regulation? Is it government, mediated regulation? Or what kind of regulation? But at the end of the day, it seems that that could be the mechanism through which we can realize socially just gig work in Kenya.
Right. Prof, very interesting set of highlights that you've put out there. And I like the fact that we're asking the question that should gig work move from sustainability or putting food on the table to innovation, to a bit more specialties? And we'll get back to that. But also you talked about 80% of these people being men, and women are left out. And Elizabeth Wanja's one job is to ensure that we have a lot more women in this space. Elizabeth, when you hear such numbers, what goes through your mind, and especially in respect to the work that you do? We're not winning with microphones. Could you just have a different one? Go for it, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that question. And I'm seated here to talk from the implementation perspective. We have discussed so much of what is expected of these gig workers, the regulations and all that. But I'm seated here having implemented such projects for quite a long time. So when we talk about this gender imbalance, when we talk about the policies, when we talk about what is expected of the gig workers, I think my sharing will be more informed from discussions that we have had in the morning. In the African Center for Women in ICT, we are an ICT for development, and our main work is to skill the online workers. So when we talk about the skilling of online workers, someone would be interested to know, how do we get them? Who are these online workers? Someone would want us to unpack it. Who is this that we are talking about, and what is the process? Because there were some questions that came during the group discussions of someone asking, how do I get to the platform owners? When we talk about Upwork, where is this Upwork? Where am I supposed to get it? So that's the work that we do on day-to-day basis to ensure that our youths, I'll talk about women later, but allow me first to focus on the need for skills, because we talk about having a market, but the product must be there. So when we are talking about Kenya being number 4, being all these, the question that we come back to is, are youths skilled to take up those opportunities? So the main work that we do with the support of UKDAB is to ensure that these youths are skilled. And in terms of skilling, we understand they are coming from different levels. So we'll start skilling from the basic digital literacy level. And in basic digital literacy level, we are looking at you who have not interacted with the computing devices. And please, online work is not computer packages. We'll get back to differentiate that later. But you who completed Form 4, maybe you went to a certain TVET, but you have not interacted with computing devices, you join the digital literacy skilling by doing the basic and interact with those computing devices. Don't look at computing devices from a phone, because some of these are underserved, they are vulnerable. So look at it from a smartphone, not from a laptop or a desktop. We'll go to the second level of intermediate digital skilling, and that is what we have been discussing throughout this day. Because in intermediate digital skilling, it's someone who have moved from the basic. When you move from the basic and you go to the intermediate, you are looking at an opportunity to make money online.
Right.
So it's just not about having the skill itself, but how are you making incomes, how are you improving your livelihoods using the intermediate. And that is where we bring the online workers and so many other career paths, the data science, data analytics, the computer science, all that falls under that intermediate digital skilling. There is the level that some of these people go, and that is the advanced. And at advanced level, we are talking about the e-solutions. So my main concern is that the intermediate, where we have skilled, and most of these digital freelancers, that is where they are in. When we skill you, what is it that we are skilling you? We are now skilling you to work online. And we are looking at you having an account, you knowing the different platforms that are there. You can do all that, but you don't even know how you'll be paid. So those are the areas of interest for us who do the digital skilling. I must say that after COVID skilling, resources in this case means you being in a position to do self-study. We use what we call the MCT platforms, a platform where you will access all the resources that you need. And as a young lady who has been busy cleaning the house, doing all that, and you only have 1 hour, you might not fit in our virtual trainings, so you are forced to do the self-study. So we take all of that to ensure that you will access the resources, just like someone who went for a physical training or someone who had a Teams training or a virtual training. You'll get an opportunity to train through a platform with the time. But that actually took place in the whole of 2020 and part of 2021, and considering that now COVID cases have gone low, we have seen that interest. I want to finalize and say that skilling is not enough. So in all our projects, I saw the presentation at the end of the morning session, we do not only rely on just that training itself. There is what we call the hand holding. Right. Look at this person who have been skilled for a month or two, or whichever period that you have been skilled. Yes, you have made a very good profile, you have opened an account, but you really need someone to, closely work with you. So the project does not end with the skilling, but there is the mentorship component, and there is also the linkage to placement partners. I'll talk a bit maybe later on the placement partners. Allow me to get to that level. Thank you.
No worries. So quite a few things that you've highlighted that I want us to talk about. And I'll build this from what Prof said. Give us a profile of what kind of jobs are there, and we looked at Kenya ranking highly when it comes to writing jobs. And you've also talked about some of the skills required here, basically, and to Prof's opening statement, you basically need like a high school diploma. Begs the question on sustainability: if 80%, how sustainable are these jobs in 5-10 years? Is of diversity, and this I'll start Prof and then Shiko. Is our lack of diversity a threat to the sustainability of this industry?
Lack of diversity. Yes. Most of the work that was done, as you said, is slightly low level in terms of expertise. Of course, there are those others that are at a very high level as well. But we also saw the platforms. You saw that most of them, Bolts and all these, are largely international organizations. And the issue then was, is it possible that we could, diversify in terms of the alternatives that we give, not just the platforms, but also the jobs, the categories of jobs that are there. And of course, that links very well to what she's been talking about capacity building, and which should go beyond just a normal digital literacy into employability. The way we talk about employability, looking at the kind of jobs that are there and the kind of skills, especially specialized skills that will be required, so that we go beyond the basics that the majority of them do. Like for rideshare, all that you need is to know how to drive, isn't it? That's all that is required. And in fact, you may even not need a high school certificate for that. But is that where we want this kind of people? Because again, we mentioned the income for that level is about 10,000 to 30,000 Kenya shillings monthly, which again is also inconsistent. Sometimes it can even go below that. And so that kind of work, even if people are committed, even if there are opportunities there, Is it the kind of work that we want, particularly the youth, to do, and things like that. So my view is that we need to diversify the platforms and the jobs, the kind of jobs that can be done. And a lot of awareness needs to be created. And in the morning we talked about exposure so that people get to know some of these jobs and even prepare themselves to be able to work in the gig economy. Something else also which is important is the perception of gig work, which is, not very good to a large extent, where it's just the stopgap as I wait to find a job. So I'm considering myself jobless if I'm working in the gig economy until I get a job. So it means that even the level of commitment is rather low in terms of even trying to build myself, to advance even my skills and all. So because I'm viewing it, I'm just holding on to this for this period in the interim as I look to get a job. So it's important that we as a country, work through this with the stakeholders and all.
Call it gig work, we call it platform livelihoods. Because we realize gig work is a very limiting definition academically to what this space actually looks like. Can you hear me? Okay.
Could you boost Shiko's mic, please? Okay.
You can hear?
Yes.
It's very limiting to what this space looks like. So when I'm hearing his number, I'm thinking, some of this, they're not what we are seeing and being reflected from our own research. And Prof, I'll give you a research so you can cite us. It would be so nice to be cited. It's been a while since we actually did like a proper academic papers, but you can cite it, it's published work. So I want to just paint the picture of what we understand as platform livelihoods from our end.
Yeah.
There are two types of platform livelihoods. There's algorithm-driven platform livelihoods and social media-driven platform livelihoods. The numbers that are tracked are the algorithm-based platform livelihoods. So what Prof said was right on. The Ubers, the Bolt, the Upworks, we can track them because we can. I love. You need to give me that map thingy, the one that was showing. So because you can easily see who is the seller, who is the buyer, and it's easy to track.
Yeah.
So those ones, I mean, even Prof's numbers were actually nice. In 2019, they were saying there's about 40,000 of those. And then he started digging. Yeah. There's 10 multiples of those, even in those algorithm ones. Because, Bonnie, you get a job, you have a Telegram account.
Right.
So I go on to Upwork, I get a job. In my Telegram account, I say, who can do this job? Yes, then I hire 4 other or 5 other people. We do this job under me, we submit, I cash in, I pay all of you.
Right.
That is the modus operandi. Yeah, I just always say like, there's the dark web and the deep web. Telegram is the deep web. Yeah, because that's where most of the stuff that is done. So,
right.
So there is that, we call it hidden hierarchy. Yeah, where there's one person and there's this other group of people who are working under them. Even in Uber, yeah, in Kenya, when you talk about matatus, we talk about squads, yeah? When I get a matatu, a vehicle, then I do squads, yeah? I give my friend or my cousin who's trying to be a driver, they go squads and they earn something up katikati when I'm busy eating lunch. Even in Uber, they have squads.
Okay.
So, and those are the numbers that are not actually counted in this in the outside the algorithm.
Right.
So that is one factor to put in mind when you are doing these numbers. Then I'll come to the numbers that actually have been put out there.
Yeah.
Number 2 is the social media-driven gig work. Yeah, and this is where the women come in. Social media-driven gig work is work that is done primarily on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Telegram. Yeah, it's work that you will never see or able to count. So us guys, what we did is we embedded ourselves in, I think I joined like 15 groups, my colleagues joined another 20. So, because we're just joining these groups to try and count what is happening in these groups. Oh my goodness, the amount of trade of services and products that happens on WhatsApp is outstanding. And it is encrypted. So we're talking even to WhatsApp people, even them, they don't know. So we're giving them this data, they're thinking, Ati what? Yeah? So when you're thinking about gig work, so we say, we have this saying in our team is, Africa is 2080 everything. 20% informal economy, 20% formal economy, 20% this, 20%, 80% that. Even in the gig work, there's 20% that we can count. 80% we cannot count. And this is across board. So we've done this research in Nairobi and outside Nairobi. We've gone all the way to Kitale. Even we tried getting those for 4 boys. You know those ones, the ones that call you and say, my child, your child, I'm the teacher, send me 500. Those ones, they're very smart, by the way. So we've tried going to access them because they are gig workers and you want to understand their mindset and how they do work. So that is just a response to some of the data because I thought it is important to clarify some of these things because we can have a perception because this thing is huge. So that's number one. Number two is women. Most of these women will not go and sign up on Upwork. Yeah? The level of effort to onboard on Upwork is just too much. Yeah? So they will be paid for, they're doing excellent, amazing work. Yeah? But there's this guy, Bonnie, said, Bonnie, I'm the guy. You go and register an account and you have like your sister, your cousin, their friends doing all the work and submitting, even all this writing work. Yeah? So this is unaccounted for data that is actually out there. So there's a lot of women who are unaccounted for in the gig work. They work in that, I call it deep web. I'll come to dark web because there's dark web also in gig work. There's that one. And I agree with Prof's numbers in terms of age. It's under the age of 35. So if you claim you're a millennial, you might just slightly make it, but it's mostly a Gen Z thing.
Nico, let me just jump in before we go to the dark web.
Yes.
Because in the morning we got a question from Charles, I think, who was asking that if you look at some of the official data that we have, it looks like it's a very small percentage in comparison to the existing jobless numbers across. And he was questioning, is there a need to even start conversations about regulating this space? But then what you're saying is that these numbers are actually there. They're just not counted on the official data points, right? And so, which then is a great segue to, now that we know of this 80% that exists there and is actually trading, does it give enough voice to say, could we have regulation in this space?
So I'm one of those people who has a love-hate relationship with regulation, because what we don't want to is curb the growth of this sector. Because regulations, especially premature regulation, might curb it, might curb what could be possibly life-changing opportunities for millions of young people across, and I always think about Africa, millions of young people across Africa who actually are benefiting from this. You have people who were hairdressers or these, and they're all doing writing jobs, graphic design, coding. Somebody emailed me today and said, I've started doing coding. Where can you send me some links? And this is somebody who is a beautician. Right. So we don't want to regulate prematurely. Right. We want the sector to at least give us another 5 years for it to grow. However, that is why the love-hate relationship comes in. Right. What we need to regulate is on social protection. Social protection is very important. So these kids are making crazy money. Like, I wanted to come to the dark web. Let me just touch on the dark web. Yeah. So the dark web is for a little bit skilled, more skilled, not a little bit, more skilled gig workers. So these are developers, software engineers, data scientists who would rather work there than work for Google, literally. They're earning $8,000 to $10,000 a month. There are many. Right. Even somebody in our team left our job to go and work there.
You succumb to the dark web.
They just come to the dark web. Yeah. And they buy the nice Audi. Nowadays I was told it's not Subaru, it's Audis. Audi, okay. Yeah. So they buy the nice Audi and are living somewhere in Kilimani and they're having the best time of their life. So there's all these clusters and hierarchy of gig workers. So yes, there's the guy who is making 10K a month, and there's Uber drivers that we need to actually work with in terms of regulation to actually get helped. But there's these other hierarchies here that we need to find what skills do they need to actually grow them, and some of them don't actually want employment. Right. We've talked to many of them, they don't want. So yes, there's regulation, but not premature regulation that is actually needed. Okay. I had another point, I'm looking at it.
Okay, as you come,
women.
Okay, great.
Well,
yeah.
finally,
Yeah.
women. So I heard what she was saying. So we've just launched 2 weeks ago a study on women and the gig economy, and we call it platform livelihoods. And if you read it, you'll see one of the biggest hurdles that women have to go through in the online space is online bullying. Like, what we have done as Africa is taken our bad behavior offline, online. No, I'm serious.
Right.
So there's this, like, so there's a very special category of gig workers called influencers.
Right.
You know, it's an actual job these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, between 2018 and now it's become an official job. So we're talking to this influencer, and she was telling me that they were given a gig, yeah? Her and a male colleague. So they are doing things. So she was getting a lot of hate, whatever, you know, trolling, Twitter is madness. And she was just complaining. And then she was telling her colleague was like, what's the matter? Me, I'm not having that. Then she said, come, sit. That's my TL. Even him, he was in shock. And then she said something powerful. It stuck with me. It says, my TL is my TL and your TL is your TL. How people react to me as a woman is very, very different for how
Right.
they react. You know Chapati Mistress? She's on Twitter. Please follow her, buy her chapatis. She's amazing. We love her. She's not the influencer. She's one of our respondents. And she said, when she started the business, it was just her gender that was double-clicked. There's some other guy who was making funny chapatis. They didn't have a problem with her.
Right.
But the moment she said a chapati is 30 bob, they said, chapati kwani imetengenezwa na gold. You know, but that is the standard cost of chapati if you want nice chapati, yeah? But it is just because of women. So we are in those bad behaviors that we have offline, we've taken online.
Yeah.
So women actually, it's not they don't want or they can't, they're just afraid. The mental toll of just being online is just too much.
Right.
Yes.
You've brought in interesting bits that I'd just like Elizabeth to pick. Elizabeth, while we're now on the question of regulation and whether or not it's time for it, do you see regulation as a solution to some of the issues that women face in the online job market? Is there a role for regulation to play in protecting women?
Wow. I'm just listening to the other two panelists, and I'm thinking behind my back, can you regulate something that we have not fully researched on? She's bringing very good, you know, from his presentation and what she's now sharing, I'm wondering, when we are talking about regulations, I think it should be informed with data. It should be informed by so many other things. So when we are talking about regulations at this particular moment, my concern is, what is it that we'll be basing on? We seem not even to know how many gig workers we have. We are not so sure of how much money this industry is making. So I think we need to first put up so many things together for us then to talk about regulations. Something else that is important for us is what has been shared here and what we have reached out to the young women that we have. When we talk about these young women, remember they come to gig work because they are underemployed. So someone is making some 20 or 30,000 in as a certain clerk in a certain law firm, but that 30,000 is not enough. But you have some 2-3 hours that you can do your article writing. So most of the people that we have, they are underemployed. So when we start, in quotes, killing something in the name of regulation, something that we do not even have adequate information, are we doing the right thing? Is it possible for us to put everything together and then we start talking about this regulation? So it's important first to do much more before now we go to what we might be discussing today. But I also want Shiko has raised in form of the online it's something that we are dealing with. We have in this digital freelancing, there's something that we are doing in the creative space, digital content creation. And in terms of training, we are doing audiovisual podcasting and vlogging and photography, because we have realized that it's also a form of livelihoods to the young women. And what she's talking about is so real. And any person who would want to go to skilling for our youths and target the digital content creation, it just doesn't start with the skilling bit. There is so much that you need to do in terms of the industry exposure. There is so much that you need to do even after. It might be in form of psychosocial support, because what she's sharing is real. It's something that most of our young women have. Actually, they are very good in this digital content creation. But when it comes to posting it in the social media, by evening, whatever they'll have faced, despite how good whatever you did is, whatever you'll have faced will make you take 2 or 3 steps back. So it's not something that we just start by skilling. We have to do so much of the background check, bring so many of these influencers to talk to our young women, but let's use the word industry expert because Daktari seems to be uncomfortable with influencers. We bring so many of these industry experts to tell them what to expect, but also to see how best as an organization can we build on this skill. So when we talk about this regulation, this online harassment, have we handled it? Have we dealt with it? I think there is so much more that needs first to be done before we think about the space of regulation. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I really like all the points that are coming out because they're making my work really easy. Prof, I would like your viewpoint on the question of regulation, but if you would direct that especially towards the owners of these platforms, right? So if you're saying, great, perhaps it's not time to regulate this space, perhaps we need a little bit more time and data. But is there space for regulation, especially in respect to the owners of some of these platforms?
Actually, when you're talking about regulation, at least from this, it's actually both ways. It's not just that you're regulating the platforms, as it were, or, you know, because what actually comes to mind when you think regulation and when you think of the government, you're thinking about tax, you're thinking about restrictions, you're thinking about don'ts, yeah? But that's really...
That's a product of lack of information. I mean, if you look
Exactly,
at Uganda,
yeah.
the solution was, let's tax everybody who's doing anything online, you know? So is that telling us that even the government or the regulators at B don't have enough information?
To a large extent, yeah, I agree with that, to a large extent. And the issue, particularly in the context of this paper that we are talking about, is justice to the workers. Yeah, ensuring that they are able to get the best out of the, you know, something decent, something dignifying, and something that is, you know, is just. And of course, the elements that we've been talking about, right from the master disciple, and the accounts that are, you know, broker accounts, if I may call them, yeah. Because to a large extent, how do you tell if what I got, maybe, of course, I'll get my cuts, as they say in Kenya, I'll get my cuts. And you'll find that by cuts, at the end of the day, you end up with 10% of what came out. It's unjust, yeah. That's what we're talking about. It's not control of the government for purposes of tax. Because again, there has to be something before you tax it. How do you tax what perhaps it doesn't even exist? Yeah. In terms of I lose the other point, but in terms of the numbers, yeah, and yeah, do you think we'll ever be able to account for everyone? I doubt. It's not really possible. So. We may have to just make do with what we can justifiably, you know, get, right, and just go on.
The other point was about the platform owners in relation to regulation.
Yes, and that's where the difficulty is. Of course, you've seen in Kenya recently, there was something about the taxi drivers, and the court, you know, saying that they should be registered and all, and you saw the kind of things that are there. I think the court is still pending in court after an appeal, yeah. And so it would be difficult. But in my view, if it were possible, in my view, I would have some sort of regulation, some form of regulation. In the worst case, you know, call it self-regulation. You know, certain codes of conduct or expectations that are concrete, are binding, and that can be measured again. So some sort of audit could regularly or intervally be done to say that you say that you do 1, 2, 3, but here are the facts. They're like the opposite. But at the very far end, of course, is the government. Register with us before you can do anything. And I think that's even a tougher one to achieve.
Right. And that's an interesting point because we are saying, and Prof, you said, you talked about just, dignified, and fairness. And Elizabeth, you talked about protecting the women in this space. So let's talk about how do we do this? We've lots and lots of numbers, most of them undocumented. Prof is suggesting perhaps self-regulation could be a thing. Is there a possibility of collective actions? So can these people get together in some sort of a union that will then advance for their interest? Shiko, from the work you do and the markets that you look at, is this a viable solution?
So I will highlight one of the pieces of work that we are doing. We actually doing a piece of work called Fair Work with Oxford University, and it's actually powered by, not sponsored by GIZ. And it is called Fair Work because it is assessment of different platforms across the world and comparing looking both at the platform side, which is self-reported. So we go to Little, we check how do you operate? How do you treat your workers? What policies do you have in place to protect your workers? What is in place from a corporate point of view that you have that we can say that there's fairness and dignity of the worker and protection, especially for women. On the other hand, we apply this same assessment with workers. We take random workers and apply the same. We said, okay, we don't tell them we've had this. We apply this and we compare the two answers and say, okay, here they match, here they don't match, here they match, here they don't match. And when they don't match, we go back to them and say, okay, this and this and these points seems to be a bit of not understanding each other, what's happening in this place. And we publish this twice a year. So we published one earlier in the year, and the other one is coming in December, so look out for it. If you Google Fair Work, you'll find a beautiful article that was done by Citizen on that work, where we ranked like Kenyan platforms. So that is one way of doing it. And Fair Work is doing an amazing job in doing this, because now, like in Kenya, when we published the first one, a few platforms called us and said, how did you come up with those results? How come us guys are last? And we're like, yeah, this is the data we have. This is data. It's not us. We just didn't choose your data. This is the data we have on you from your workers. And so this year they improved. So it is just being a big brother, unfortunately. Number two, I like the work, what the prof has talked about in terms of putting associations and unions together. We are working with an association here in Kenya. It's called Online Professional Workers Association of Kenya. I think that's what it's called. Upwork. So we're working on Upwork, and we're working with them to empower them as an organization, yeah, to be able to work for their teams. Because we realized after several rounds of Fair Work, and there's another piece of work I can't actually talk about, that we've worked with platforms, we realized platforms will not do much. Bottom line, they want a profit, yeah? Whatever that takes, yes? So what we can do is empower the workers themselves to actually be able to agitate for their own rights and being justice. And how do you do that? Is through association. I'm so sad that Billy is not here, because we've been working with Billy for the past 2 years as well. Is work with these unions and associations to empower them and give them capabilities to be able to actually achieve the rights and the goals, and the voice of the worker is actually heard, which is the most important thing here. Because if the worker's voice, you can do all the policies and stuff, but if the worker's voice is not heard at the highest decision-making place as possible, it will not be done. The third thing, in January, look out for it, we are going to be releasing another framework. And while Fair Work is great, it only covers platforms, yeah? We are releasing another framework for the social media on the 80%. We call them the 80%. They are unaccounted for, they are not hard, but they have problems. We're in all these groups. So eventually we showed our identity and said we are doing this work what can we put in place. It's just how do we do this? With this framework, we've already started like talking to people like Facebook and saying, okay, we're doing this piece of work. What do you guys think? We have a tool to show you as Facebook, these are things that you can put in place, or Twitter, to protect
So you
the
reckon
women.
for bigger platforms or for platforms generally, shaming is a good way of getting them in line?
It's not shaming. Let's call them in awareness.
Okay, we'll go with awareness.
We are telling this is what your users are saying about you. Can you just pull up your socks just a little? Or this is how your users are using your platform.
Right.
Why don't you add extra features?
Right.
So by doing that, you're showing them that you need to add value to your customers.
Right, still exploring on the whole idea of collective action as a tool for sustainability. Elizabeth, your organization is in some shape or form collective action because you're looking at the affairs of women in ICT. Are there lessons that we can borrow from that probably ghostwriters or tech developers or software developers can borrow in the way that your organization is organized and mobilized so that people can have a bigger voice to address their interest?
Yeah, there are several best practices that I think we can share, and I've shared a few of them. But basically, in terms of the platform owners, we can only do as much. The bit of the best practices for us will go to the workers themselves, the gig workers, but very limited to what we can take to the platform owners. One of the challenges that you might face is, and the members of WAPA can confess to this, it's very hard for these young ladies to disclose the exact amount of money that they are earning. I think that's a challenge that every other person who is on online work faces. So when you ask everyone, they all earn between 10 to 30,000. I know of several cases who are making over 50,000, but I think that's a bracket that we have been in for such a long time. So when you go back and to talk about these best practices, they need to be paid this much, they need to have this social protection put in place. And then you go back to the people that you are defending and you are realizing, they don't earn as minimal as this. I'm saying this because I started by saying that there are some placement partners that we work with. One of the placement partner, they pick our young women and they pay between 24 to 26 hours. But one of the things that I like about that placement partner is that they define in terms of hours. You can't work beyond 40 hours in a week. Because another thing, I don't know how true this one is, most of the online workers find themselves working either during, he's looking at me, and if I say that, I know he'll call me later. Okay, most of them find themselves working during the day. I said you are a clerk in a law firm somewhere, but at night you are doing the online work. So there's this placement partner that we have worked with, and clearly you can only work 40 hours in a week. And I saw that as a good practice, despite paying very little, mainly because most of our young women overwork. You are working in several platforms. You're not working in one. You're looking for gigs everywhere so that at least you can make a living. But now when I ask you how much you're earning, you only report in one gig, in one platform, but not all the other platforms. So the other bit that we have done in terms of the best practices is what I talked about, the hand-holding bit, which goes a bit also on apprenticeship. She defined it differently when she said someone picking so much work in form of a BPO, and then you employ this number of people, but you pay very minimal. So I think we can try to work with he talked about the masters, that big person, to see how best can this person also take care of these other workers. But most of these things, I must say, I think there's so much to be put together.
I move to the audience. I know there's quite a few questions. And I'd like us to talk about, still under sustainability, let's talk about the sort of contracts that we have here. You've mentioned about overworking of people. You've talked about the time difference, now that most of the clients are in a different time zone. Most of the people are desperate to get jobs, so they settle for any kind of contract. some people are underqualified for the kind of contracts they sign up for, and so they do not deliver. Shiko, if we could start with you, just give us a picture of how these sort of negotiations look like, and in your view, what can we do to improve them?
It's on. Okay, good. So allow me to take another step back. I'm sorry, guys. So I love what she said about young women taking more than one job. So that is that's something that came out very starkly clear in our study, because many of women were doing like 3 different jobs. They are writing, they are doing tagging, they are selling something online. There's one we found with five gigs. Yeah, they were making 70K a day. You start rethinking about your career choices at that point. And then we asked them, but I thought the whole idea of being a gig worker is to increase flexibility and time. And they asked me, for who? For what? Why are we, who said I want free time? Yeah? I need to fund my lifestyle. I shut up at that point because I realized this is not a conversation that is going to end. Yeah? So when you talk about regulating time and stuff, it's also, you're not regulating personal choice. You have to be very clear on that. It's about, because even I've met Uber drivers, because when you're doing this study, you're always on research mode. You're always talking to everybody. And you ask them, oh, so what else do you do? Oh, I do accounting. Do you need an accountant? I'm thinking, no, I was just curious. And I think they do accounting on the side, and then they do online writing, and they're driving their Uber. So they hold 2 or 3, at average it's 3 gigs at any one time. And it's to fund their life. It's not to live, it's not just putting food on the table, to be honest, but it's just funding their lifestyle. So when you're talking about regulation of like time, you also have to give choice. It's one of those things that you have to balance. What does choice look like for that? So your question was around sustainability. So negotiation is important, especially for platformized gig work, yeah? Because sometimes, and that's why I'm highly in support of like Uber, making sure that, because that is a life and death kind of job, yeah? Make sure that they're contracting these, either verbal or, one of the things that we look in fair work is actually contracting, is there a formal way of engaging you? And formal way of engaging you does not need to be a written contract. It can be a click of a button somewhere saying, I'm engaging this person for the duration of doing this piece of work. Once it's fit, that is very important. The challenge comes to our 80%, where it's just a verbal and a WhatsApp message, which is the contract. How do you enforce that? Again, it's one of those things that while we want to regulate, there's a lot of unknowns, and we want the industry and the sector to mature just a little bit before we get there. Yeah? So, and like now when you abuse somebody online, the other day there were two lawyers, huge lawyers, who had a tiff, and then they took each other to court. It's a precedence. Yeah? What does that look like in the gig space? So we need things like that. Twitter has matured to a place where when you have a tiff, it's TWIF. When you have a twiff, I can actually take you to court. But how does that translate in the gig work? We need the sector to mature before we make some of those decisions that might inhibit the growth of the sector. Remember?
Often is, it's always the big players or the client who is accused of breaching the agreement.
Yes.
But also we've seen increasing levels of people taking up roles and they abandon them halfway or they don't quite deliver. So in terms of just ensuring that it's more sustainable, it's dignified, you can plan around it. And you mentioned a very great idea of perhaps you just need to click somewhere to show that. How then do you encourage like the individuals who are doing 3-4 gigs to put this in their workflows?
So what was I saying? Yes, that one. I forgot. I forget what that. There's a voice thing for it. Yeah. So if we are the people who do that, it's milestone based. If I can be able to record over an Indian movie and read the script accurately over 3 hours, I need to be paid for that. Not that I have. And it takes preparation. It's the preparation part of it. It's just reading the script plainly, reading it over, recording. All of that needs to actually be paid for that. Yeah? But there are some things that, like I'm saying, like the writing, when I had Prof saying we need to regulate like the hidden hierarchy, I felt like there are so many people who are learning through that process. If we regulate that, we'll be cutting them off because they actually just need that for experience. Yes. Yeah.
Great. I'll open to a couple of questions, and then we'll come back to this end. Hopefully, we can have a mic that we can pick our questions from. There's quite a number, so we'll start with the lady at this end, moving.
Batteries.
Okay, we can move this,
This
one
one
now.
seems to work, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Let them.
Do you want to raise your hands again, please?
We'll start from the lady here.
The lady here.
All right, thank you so much. My name is Nema Mjesia from Kenya ICT Action Network, and my question, I will direct it to Elizabeth Wanja. During these platforms that are online, are there leave periods for women who are maybe pregnant, you're working, and you need like a leave, you want your platform to continue working as it is, the stars to be there, but now you're pregnant, you go for leave for 9 months, that platform is inactive. So is there security for the women? Thank you.
I have two questions, and I'll give a short background because I don't want. Oh, okay. I have seen on this paper for the panel discussion, they say that this institute of the German Federal Ministry, it's addressing issues relating to digitalization, particularly in the global south. So global south, I presume is Africa. And we are African people. And I'm not against women who are in a digital space. But as Daktari rightly put it, when a woman puts something, before evening, they want to pull it down. So now, my concern is on one thing. We know that they are under attack because of maybe some misunderstandings. But of course, they defend themselves because of what you call human rights. So now, under the rubrics of fundamental freedoms and rights, should we just say that people should not comment anything, even if a group of gangsters organized themselves and said, we want to do a march and we need viewership so that we can earn money, so just shut up because it's our fundamental right and freedom. So I want you to help us on this, because some of these things we see, for example, me, I don't believe that working is a career. But of course, it can attract viewership. Because my concern as a parent is one. So what is the motive of this person doing it? So kindly help me around that as I prepare the second question.
I think what we're trying to say is cyberbullying is what we're addressing. And there are a lot of trolls who know about it. She talked about the example of that lady is not shocking, but there's a lot of hate on her platform just because she's a woman. And that's what we're trying to address, that you're okay to have your view on a product, but there is cyberbullying and trolling that is discouraging a lot of women from participating in this space. Yeah? I got it right, yeah? Great. Bundi, and then we'll come to...
Okay, yeah, my name is Bundi. Thank you for sharing very great insights. My question goes to Shiko. You have highlighted the existence of a hidden hierarchy, which really resonates very well with the online workers on the ground. So the question is, do you see a world where there is upward mobility among the online workers in these hierarchies, such that newbies going up the hierarchy and going to the top of the hierarchy, and what are the drivers to that?
Good evening. My name is Judy Oyo. I'm a student leader representing KUSO and also recently graduated from Kiriri Women's University. So my question goes to Wanja. You are working with the young women, and most of the time the comrades are not getting access of these online platforms which are genuine for them to better their career. You find, even if you say that there's a bigger number of people who are in the online work, but a bigger number of youth are out or are having the wrong channel of careers or online platforms that they are on. So in what way will you at least try and advance it so that these young students can get access of this online platform, and also these young female, especially from my school, I'll advocate for that, the young women and also in ICT, and also the young women also in the business sector, that at least can access these online platforms.
Of course you will. You've achieved your 10,000 steps today.
Okay, maternity leave for online workers. There's a lady in purple. I'll give her an opportunity to respond to that. She's an online worker, and being a lady, I know she will give more details about that. I'll give it a different perspective from a skilling point of view, but her from experience, she'll talk about that. Is that allowed? I wanted to respond to the other question that she asked about universities. As I talk, my colleagues are in the coastal universities. That is TUM and the coastal university. When we talk about digital skilling, I talked about the young women in the rural settings and also in the informal setups. Yeah? However, we work with the universities, and we have signed so many of these MOUs with the universities. I'm not so sure why we have not come to where we are. We have been in Kenyatta University, we have been in Seku. The whole of this week, I know tomorrow we'll be issuing certificates in TUM University, all ensuring that the learners, the students, and most of our impact stories that we have documented is what we have done with the university students. However, we are a bit specific to those ones in third or fourth year. And for TFETs, we start at a lower level than where we would start with the universities. So we have ICT for education, budgeting, primary and secondary schools, it's about coding. In TFETs, we start at a certain level, but universities, there is the levels that we start on. And when I talked about our curriculum, starting from basic digital literacy level to intermediate and to advanced, we are talking about solutions. So there is all the packages there. I think it's just a matter of time that we get to where we are, and this forum gives us an opportunity to network and talk more. We have a package for you. Thank you.
I don't think I had a question, but maybe now that I have this, I could share my experience from another project. I'm a PI in a project looking at cyberbullying on Facebook, particularly funded by Facebook itself, but focusing on universities. But there are gender nuances that you're talking about. For some reason, just because she is a woman, there are certain emotions that seem to thrive. And that reminds me of the Nairobi streets. If a woman passes by, the kind of reactions, and if it's a man, when they are women, So there's a bit, ladies are more vulnerable to bullying, to cyberbullying. And I don't know whether it's in our culture or, but that's true. There's something else, sorry, to eat into this. there's a social, let me say social effects of some of these, and particularly those people that Shiko is defining as being in the dark web. People who are earning a lot of money, driving, they operate locomotives and stuff, yeah. They sleep when we are working, they work when we sleep, and a lot of social issues, yeah. Imagine going into drunkenness and drug abuse, and, you know, I think that's also something that we could talk about.
So, one of our respondents, we didn't know this. So we are busy doing work. Then she disappears for 3 days. Then she comes back like it's normal. So I DM'd her and asked her, "Hi, are you okay? You've been away?" Oh, I just had a baby. I'm thinking, wait, what? And she was back like she never left. And that really struck me. So I asked her, what are you doing at work? Said, because you have to work. If I leave, I lose all my customers. She said, if I leave for more than that week, if you notice, my customers will notice. And that is the reality of online work. It is unfair in that sense. So it's a matter of self-discipline for the worker themselves. That's why I love Upwork in terms of just creating awareness. It has to come from themselves. Nobody will institute go for maternity leave. Nobody will even say I'm pregnant if it's going to have an implication on my earnings. I'm coming towards. So what we've seen from our study, there's actually an upward, there's actually classes of workers. There are those ones who are entry level, there are people who are a bit qualified, then there's the seniors, and there's the people who actually own their account. So what happens is they move upwards. They come in, I've just learned Excel and stuff. I'm given like small jobs to do. Once I've proven myself, I'm given more complex work and even more complex work. After that more complex work, then I'm able to have confidence of opening my account and starting from scratch, because I know how that route to getting my account 5-star will take. So there is that. It's there. It's mapped out. That user journey is there completely. There's somebody who asked, I hope Ken has not left. Oh yeah, he's not left. How do you access this platform? Sweetie, look on that side. Like that side. Then at the back, the person who is smiling, find him. That is a direct link. I hope he will help you. Number 2, there's a program by government of Kenya called Ajira. Ajira has done a lot of work. It has strengths and weaknesses. But what I've loved about Ajira is it has a listing of platforms that you can actually go and get work from. Yeah, verified platforms. And they're not just Upwork, there are hundreds of them. Yeah. So for me, I have a challenge for your colleagues. So your colleague, and then if you go to JKUAT KU, Kabarak in Nakuru, Eldoret University, what is the other one that does a lot of gig work? Maseno, all of them, it's self-discovery. It's just you need just a little bit fire and on your back. Yeah. So it's just that kidogo fire. But Ken there, he'll sort you out, kabisa.
Okay, I've got 2 questions. I think directly related to Dr. Shiko. First, I think you mentioned issues around. My name is Alan Ochola from the SET Research Sprint. So my question will relate to 2 questions actually. A quick one, skill transfer. You said you got to the algorithmic driven and also the social media driven. So I'm interested in knowing if they transition from the informal work, let me say informal in quotes, to the formal work trajectory. And also because you saw the below past 35, most of these people are not on this platform. So our assumption is, where do they go? And our assumption is that probably they're in the formal work. So I'm interested in knowing also the skilled, can it be used as a means of gaining legal, like, or maybe formal employment? Then I'm wondering the second question, issues around the issue of litigation to drive change. Because from whatever you are saying is like, we are helpless. We are at the mercy of these platforms. What we are seeing is that even these major platforms you are talking about, like Facebook, they have become responsible, not through by empowering users, but also by being fined. That is one way which has driven them to be responsible. So are we going to fold our arms and wait for these platforms to become responsible? I'm challenging you kind of a way in such a way that you can use litigation to inspire change in this platform. Are you seeing that one in the future, or maybe? Yeah.
So mine is, because the conversation today is largely around the online platform work. And maybe I wanted to pose this question generally to all the panelists in terms of when they take a look maybe down 5 years, 10 years from now, how do you see general trends in the offline work affecting online work? Because again, online work does not exist in utopia. It exists within what we have had as kibarua for a very long time. So whereas sustainability in terms of online work may be a conversation, offline work sustainability, there is no doubt about it, because it's the norm. It's how people have gotten jobs for years. So what do you see generally trends in the offline work, which is the larger 80 or 90, as opposed to the 20 we are speaking about today, affecting online work? Because as it is, even if you thought around the Employment Act, we have not successfully tackled offline work. If you thought about the various types of service contracts we have in these countries and many others, at the end of the day, the general trend within the offline work, it's the same workers migrating largely to the online work. How do you see general trends around offline work affecting the online part?
Okay, my name is Esther from Digital Opportunity Trust, and I have a question for Shiko, Dr. Shiko. What, from the research that you've been doing, what are you seeing as the ways women especially, but in general gig workers, are dealing with issues around access to devices and the cost of data? And what have you also seen around inclusion and how some of these platforms are driving inclusions for people with disabilities and people in rural and marginalized areas? And then we've also seen a trend in the last few weeks. A lot of the larger platforms have been letting go of thousands and thousands of people, latest being Twitter, which let go of all the African workers 3 days after they opened, and Facebook this morning letting go of another, I think, 1,000 or so. And how is that going to affect what, what we're seeing and we're terming as sustainability within the gig economy? Because, the platforms are hosting a lot of these gig workers.
Thank you so much. So just on skills transfer, it's not past the age of 35 because people stop working for gig economy at the age of 35. It is age of 35 because when did internet become active in Kenya? About 10, 12 years ago. So the 35-year-olds were in their early 20s at that time, and they got actively involved on the internet. So we are getting the dinosaurs of early internet access users being gig workers now not because because they are actually aging to 35. So if you do this study in 5 years, this cutoff age will be 40. Yeah? And in 10 years, it will be 45. Why? Because time is passing. It's not because after 35 you're looking for other things. It's because of where we are in terms of our maturity, in terms of technology. Does that make sense? Litigation. If you look at every Facebook case, all of those things, they have been primarily driven by customer. See, they're called CSK, CFK, COFAC, those ones. Customer support organizations. People, it's associations of people who use this internet that lobby their governments to put measures in place. Yeah, it's not driven by government deciding, today Google is taking too much data. It's people coming together and saying Google is taking too much of our data, or Facebook has been violating our data. Let's go and lobby for our space, and let's tell government they need to sue them to be able to put them in check. Yeah, so that has to happen ground up. We have a great new minister, right, in ICT, trade and industry, and which is the other ministry, and industrialization. Those are the 3 ministries that affect this work. Yeah, those 3 ministers will not know what is happening until somebody tells them, and it has to be followed by data from people who actually are actively using these platforms, and that's why it has to be workers upwards. Number 2, general trends offline and offline. Hi Alex, you're good? So it's going to affect. I tell you, we take our bad manners online. Yeah, it's the same way. I know Alex. Let me just plug in Alex. Alex runs an amazing platform called Fundis. Yeah, and it connects informal workers to gigs online using an online platform. So if you want a fundi, a carpenter, somebody to clean for you, please meet him. He will help you. Okay. And he has a great platform. So all these things, people, mama fuas nowadays are reliant on being on WhatsApp. Yeah, in your estate WhatsApp group, your mama fua is always asking, sunieke kwa WhatsApp group nipate kazi leo. How many of you are in those who say, oh, my mama fua is available for 2 days a week because they've been put for a gun on their head? Please put me on that WhatsApp group. I need work for 2 days. Yeah. So that is happening already, and it's going to continuously affect how we are doing our work in life. Access to devices, it's still a big hurdle, but one that is managed. Yeah. So we have a couple of projects that we've done around access to devices on a pay-as-you-go model. Yeah, lipa pole pole. These kids are doing lipa pole pole. They're timing that if I take a gadget worth 40K, I should be able to pay it in 3 months. Yeah. And they are doing that, yeah? And they're being able to pay a really expensive gadget over 3 months and able to do their work. The one thing I discovered is MiFi, yeah? By JT. I'm sorry for, I hope this, okay, I have not been paid for this. This is not marketing. By JTL, yeah? The fiber people. It is so popular, I wanted to get, I'm still going to get myself one. Because the data is cheap, and it's reliable. It's not overpopulated. Maybe if after this everybody will just go and get a JTL MiFi, and it will become really bad experience. So people have learned to hack it, yeah? And this is happening not just in Nairobi. We try as much as possible not to do our studies in Nairobi, because Nairobi, you can be in Nairobi or New York or London, and it's the same experience in terms of the internet. But outside there, where it's real Africa, we like experiencing that. And what I've just told you is not a Nairobi thing. It's somebody sitting in Nyahururu, yeah, doing this. So it is something that is happening. They are hacking how to get access to the internet. They're saying, provided this 3G, I'm going to be there. So what we saw between 2021 June and now is most kids are actually migrating out of Nairobi, because they're asking themselves, why should I pay for a small apartment or flat for 30K, while I can go there and get one for 10K? Yeah. And my level, my lifestyle does not change, because I'm sitting on my desk 14, 15 hours a day, yeah? If I want to come Dunda, I just panda my Audi, and I'm in Nairobi, yeah? And I'm here. So that is happening. And unfortunately, inclusion in this space is not great, especially for physically disabled people. It is very unfortunate. It is not there yet. It's been made for highly mobile people. And yes, there's a lot of work that is happening. Fair Work is working towards it, and other organizations are working towards it. It is not there. Google, it's not you. It's unfortunately not there. For women, women are there. They're trying to get their niche, but they're not there yet. As Elizabeth said, we're not there yet, but women are doing those hidden hierarchy because of the fear of bullying. Yeah, I think once we solve bullying and being harassed online, we'll see a lot more women participating, because I don't have to take a man. So the first study we did in 2020, we found women were taking men's name to be able to work online. Literally. Like I become Bonnie today, and I open an account online so I'm able to work, because I won't be harassed. And it's not just being harassed online, even biased towards getting work. Yeah, because you're going to be biased against getting work because you're a woman. Yeah, so they Google Wanjiko, African female, and the first picture they see there is election violence. This one cannot do the work. But if I take Bonnie, Bonnie has a fancy name, yeah? So I take his name and I put myself online, I get a lot of work. So there's a lot of that, and there's nuances around race as well. Like being black and African, also people have decided they live in Indonesia and India, but they're in Nairobi, so they can get that work. So there's all those nuances. They're going to be worked on, but at least we're taking one step at a time. Data, we've been doing this for 3 years, and things have changed over just those 3 years. And COVID had a lot to do with it, but that step change is not going back because of that. And somebody asked about the effects of all these layoffs on what we are doing. This layoff is momentarily. Yeah, Twitter fired people, then rehired them within 24 hours. Yeah, and it's going to happen after this recession in 2024 June, after the summer of 2023, not 24. After the summer of 2023, things are going to be up. The job market is going to be high. Everything is going to be back. So it's just because we are all in the world going through a recession, so job layoffs are happening. I hope that helps. There was another question for all the people. Did we answer? Yes, I did.
Yeah, I just wanted to make 2 or 3 inputs to the question of moving online to offline. And I was looking at all the sectors and what we are doing with the digital skills, or even technology is evolving. So what exactly are doing with all the sectors? I'm referring to a project that we have somewhere in Laikipia and other counties. And one of the things that I have noted the farmers will do, they don't have to travel to the agrovet, ask what is this that is affecting my beans or my maize. There is a way you can just take a photo of your plant, whatever it's suffering from, go to a certain app, and then it will even recommend what is it that you need to buy. Looking at most of these offline jobs that we are, and I was relating to the so many sectors that we have, whether it's agriculture, education, trade, everything. I think it's for you in whichever sector that you are in to look at the opportunity that are there in digital skills, because that's where we are headed. That's where all the sectors are headed. I mean, we stopped taking our merchandise to the market. We went to the WhatsApp status where I just post the sort of shoes that I'm selling and ensure that I have enough people who can ask. We stopped wasting that time. There's so much that has changed, and it's for you to think of how can you revolutionize the sector that you are in to ensure that you're making use of the digital skills. So I'm not saying that the offline jobs will end, but how best can we make use of the technology in working, in those offline jobs?
I want us to bring this to a landing because of time, but there's so many questions that have come on Slido. So I'll just scan through them and just pick 1 or 2 that we could address. Most of them have already been spoken about. In regards to the gig economy, there was a question of how do we empower marginalized community to be part of this? How do we protect gig workers who lack informed data? What are the hindrances of getting the data? How do we ensure that mentors don't make more than mentees? That has been addressed. In regards to regulation, how do you ensure that we protect new entrants from exploitation? Are there laws and regulations guiding that? How do we stop exploitation, scams, and or on the platforms? In terms of exploitation, again, quite a few. on regards to platforms, there's an issue of policy intervention to promote creation and thriving of locally owned platforms. So a lot of these are picking on safety of the person getting the jobs and how to ensure that they are safe going forward. But to my panel, as we bring this home, in one sentence, what is this one thing that can be done to ensure sustainability of online jobs? I'll start with Shiko coming down. Or let me start with Elizabeth, she's closest to the mic.
What is the one thing that can be done to ensure sustainability? One, let's post regulations. That's my humble request. Let's create more awareness to the youths that we have outside there. Online jobs are real. People are making income out of it. We only need to enhance and build so much capacity with them. Thank you.
Thank you. For me, I would say that one of the issues that we should address is exposure. Exposure that is enlightening and enables people to see opportunities there and how best to get get hold of them, be able to harness and exploit them.
So for me, a real gig worker asks the question that most of them ask. Yeah, they don't want to be employed in real 5, 3, 9. It's 9 these days. 8 to 5 jobs. Thank you. They want the flexibility of to have a choice of what they want to do. How do you help them go from one step to the other? Is it skills? On one hand, is it devices and infrastructure on the other? Is it being able to position Kenya as a place to go if you have a lot of gig work? Kenyans are skilled, Kenyans are efficient, and they work with excellence. So that is how do you develop that sustainability, is increase skills, increase access to infrastructure and devices, and finally position the country in a way that people see it attractive enough, like India, to send jobs to us. Yeah, thank you.
And I guess that's a very good place to leave it, where we've spent about slightly over an hour just wrapping our minds about how do we make this space sustainable. Special thanks to my panelists, Dr. Shiko, Prof. Tom, and Elizabeth. Round of applause to them, please. And a proper round of applause to my audience for all your questions and engagement. And like we said, this has been a fantastic, and also thank you for all the people who joined us online for staying with us throughout this session. Thank you. We can give a round of applause to the people online. And like we said in the morning, this has been a learning expedition, and as Fabian promised, that a lot of the outcomes of this will be shared, and in some shape or form you will be able to get your hand into it. This brings to an end the proceedings. However, I'd like to bring back Fabian to, we have another survey, no? We're good? Fantastic. So like I said, I hope you did network. I hope you got to speak to somebody else who is in this space. And our hope is that some of the lessons that you have here will be carried off into the spaces in which you operate, and they will help in innovating and crafting solutions in those spaces. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for spending your time with us. I believe there's coffee outside, and have a good evening. Thank you.